the war on Yemen is continuing, and there was a lot of interest a couple of months ago. There was a lot of attention. The Ro Khanna motion in the House, the Bernie Sanders, Chris Murphy, Mike Lee effort in the Senate. Now, and all they're trying to do is cut off U.S. funding for this war. And again, this war goes back to 2015, when essentially the Obama administration literally is a sop to the Saudis. The Gulf states were having meltdowns and conniptions and freaking out and sloshing all sorts of money along, of course, with the Israel lobby across D.C. because of the Iran deal. The most successful piece of diplomacy in our modern world until... Actually, Trump hasn't quite fully destroyed it. He's just severely undermined it. But the Europeans, the Iranians, the Chinese, Russians are still working to keep this thing going because it's in fact been quite successful. So the war in Yemen started, the war which was perceived by the Saudis as a proxy war with Iran. They thought the Houthis, they talked about Hezbollahization, even though the Houthis were actually an organic, or to use a, I can't help myself, they were endogenous. They were a group that worked from a base in Yemen and had their own roots in Shia politics. And by the way, I always like to stipulate in these conversations, not our politics. I mean, this is right-wing religious politics, essentially. But they have very legitimate grievances and invalid political concerns, and they would be part of any kind of equitable broad settlement in Yemen. And since 2015, the Yemenis and the Emiratis have unleashed one of the most brutal mass killing campaigns that is happening in the world today. There's been cholera epidemics, food shortages, children are starving to death, hospitals and funeral homes are being bombed. And since Trump got into office, just like with drone strikes, just like with all these other areas where there already was a obscene policy in place, the small checks on what is just sort of unregulated mass slaughter have been totally removed. And the Trump administration, as of a couple of days ago, is objecting to measures to end U.S. support for the Saudis in the Yemen war, according to a headline in Reuters. The Trump administration threatened Monday to veto an effort in the U.S. Congress to end U.S. military support for a Saudi-led coalition war in Yemen, continuing a standoff with lawmakers over policy in the kingdom. And it goes on, basically, the sort of Trump spin is that the measure is inappropriate because they're providing refueling and support services, not troops. So this is a ridiculous, I mean, I'm annoyed by pedantic arguments in general, but this is the sort of purest sociopathic expression of that. And we already know, I mean, we know the base of the relationship in general on oil and arms deals. And we know that Trump is even more naked and even more venal, along with Mike Pompeo, than even people in U.S. Congress who are terrible, who are awful. The mutilation and murder of Jamal Khashoggi even managed to offend as pitiful a creature as Lindsey Graham. So this is something that we're going to need to keep putting a lot of energy on, and the stakes are, and the battle lines are really clear. I mean, it's the Trump administration, it's Republicans who back it. There were 5 Democrats in the House, the bloodbath, murderous 5 Democrats who voted to undermine this legislation several weeks ago. And then there are basically just Raytheon and other precision-guided missile systems and weapons manufacturers. This is a raw conflict in that regard. So we'll stay on it. You just enjoyed that Michael Brooks Show video, and you can get a lot more by subscribing to us here at the Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel. It's literally right there.